Hi there, this is Jennifer Vanderbeek, Imagine Artist in Residence, and in today's video I'm going to show you a very quick and easy technique to add a stained glass effect to your paper crafting projects by blending two products from Imagine that you might not have thought to put together before. To start with, I am going to use this window die to cut three frames out of black cardstock, and that's the die on the bottom there that you see. And then I'm going to use the interior section here, what would actually create the panes of the window, to cut out the sections from my card front as well as a separate panel. And between those two, I'm going to sandwich a piece of acetate, and then the frames will go on top. This is sort of just dry fitting the card just to kind of make sure everything is going to more or less work. Now, because I used the window die on its point as opposed to its normal orientation, I get this great kind of argyle look, and so I'm going to use that to inform my color choices. Now, there are two ingredients to this technique, and the first one is a memento marker. So I'm going to fill in the window panes. Again, for lack of a better term, we're just going to call them window panes. I'm going to fill in the window panes just with the memento marker, and then we're going to introduce ingredient number 2, which is on point glue. And I'm going to use the tip of the on point glue bottle to just kind of scribble the glue over the marker. Now, because the memento hasn't been able to dry yet on the acetate, it's going to mix with the on point glue, and when you're working with it, you can kind of create this wavy, bumpy, scribbly texture. Now, because on point glue is awesome in its own right, it's gonna, if you just leave it to dry on its own, which you could totally do, you will end up with a more or less level, smooth surface by the time it's finished drying. That's not exactly what I wanted. So what I'm going to do is, rather than let it dry on its own, I'm going to use my heat gun and apply just enough heat so that the glue will set before it has a chance to smooth out. And I'm going to heat it just to the point of, maybe a couple little bubbles forming, but not too far after that. I don't want to risk scorching the glue or ruining anything else. And I will say that for this technique, it works best to use, plastic sheeting or acetate that is meant to go through a laser printer. So, like, your printable overhead transparencies that you get in a pack from the office supply store. That's what I'm using here. And it does a really good job of not warping when I apply the heat gun to it. Construction of the card goes very quickly from this point out. A little bit of on point glue in the corners is enough to hold the acetate to the card base, as well as to attach the second front over the acetate, creating that sandwich. Now, I opted to use wax paper over top the decorated acetate just in case anything was a little bit tacky, so that it wouldn't stick to my acrylic blocks that are holding everything down, to prevent any warping while the glue sets. Again, the on point glue is fabulous for getting just the right amount of adhesive on the small window pane portions. And I decided that even though I could trim out the sides of that middle section and just have one layer of the frames all over the place, it was so simple just to leave it in place and put the whole middle frame overlapping the other two, and I think it makes for a stronger card, and you don't have to worry about piecing funny angles. The corners were a little bare once the edges were all neat and trimmed, so I decided to take the offcuts from the window frames, which you might have noticed it's black on the front. This particular cardstock is black on the front and khaki on the back. And I just split those squares into triangles and layered them with some of the white cardstock offcuts from the window panes, and created a simple little corner decoration to finish it out. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and for more tips and project ideas, please point your browser to imaginecrafts.com.